Dude, how? How am I... How? I always do like an homage, not always, often, do an opening homage to a film, especially when I like it. How am I supposed to do that for this? I think I'm creative enough to come up with something, but I don't got those kinds of resources. I have like a single day to come up with an homage and film it. This man had 30 years.
It's a Friday once again.
Hello, my fellow freaks, and welcome back to the channel. I hope you have all had a great week, or great 2 weeks. My apologies for the lack of a video last week. Trust me, I did still try to pull through and get one out. I am very stubborn. But, I was sick and bedridden with the flu. In fact, in this video, you will probably still hear some remains of that flu because my nose is still very congested. So if I'm sniffling a lot, if there are weird cuts because I go into a coughing fit, I'm sorry. And I'm also sorry for the lack of video last week. So if you did not see the community post, the film that I was going to review last week is now being rescheduled for May. And why is it being, why are you rescheduling it for May when this week exists? Why didn't you just do it this week? I'll explain it to you, again, in case you didn't see the community post. So the user DannyTheStreet17 gave me a really wonderful suggestion recently for a month-long theme. I do like to do like month-long themes or summer themes. I think it's fun and I don't know, it's just, I like it. And they gave me an idea that I really just couldn't pass up, which is to do a month of entirely animated horror. And what better month to do that than my birthday month? Because I love animation. I don't talk about it a whole lot on the channel, but I do really like animated films, especially stop motion. So all of the films for the month of April will be animated pieces. Well, almost all of them. 3 out of 4 films for the month of April will be animated horror films. There is the exception of April 17th, which is the Friday right before 420, where I would really like to do Evil Bong 2. So with the exception of the Friday before 420, most of April is going to be animated horror. That's what I'm getting across. And what better way to kick off this month of mostly animated horror than to review a film that has been on my list, on my radar, everything, since it was released. I have wanted to desperately watch and review this film since I did my original written blog before moving everything over to a visual format that more people pay attention to. And because I have been wanting to watch it for a very long time, I also wanted it to be the first because, well, actually the day I'm recording this is my birthday, April the 1st. So for my birthday week, I wanted to do something that I've been waiting forever to watch and review. And what film is it that I am so hyped to talk about this week? Well, that film is Mad God from 2022 and directed by Phil Tippett. As a lover of all things disgusting and grotesque, and as a lover of stop motion, Mad God has been on my radar for a very long time. As I said, since it was released officially. Now I will do a little bit of a disclosure. It wasn't until after I watched it and kind of looked into it a little that I learned about how there were Kickstarters and shorts made preemptively to the official release. That I did not know about. I think the first time I heard about Mad God was literally when it got released on Shudder. So I'm not gonna take the credit of like, oh, I've followed this since it began or something. No. But I still have been interested in it for a very long time. For like four years, I guess. Because everything about it seems right down my alley. Like, this movie was made for me. Phil Tippett back in the 80s was like, man, I know in the future there's gonna be a young lady named STARGUTZZZ and she's gonna want a film that's filthy and disgusting. Filthy, disgusting, morbid wasteland with like gross, grody, gnarly creatures, and I have to make this film for when she... What the fuck am I saying? This film is one that has developed a massive cult following behind it, and I mean, it's really no surprise because Mad God is the absolute definition of a passion project. Because Tippett spent about 30 years, I think a little over 30, making this film out of his garage, and I think from what I read, the only assistance that he got was from like film students. So like a very, very independent production. And I am so incredibly excited to, I was gonna say sit here, but I'm standing today. I'm so extremely excited to talk to you guys about this. In fact, this is one of the longer reviews that I've written in a while. So get your snacks, get a drink, hang tight. I have a feeling this is gonna be a little bit of a longer video this week. But first, if you are new here, hi, my name is STARGUTZZZ. Any kind of like running, crashing, loud noises that you might hear going on in the background, those are my cats. Also, my movie reviews tend to be more of a discussion of elements that I find to be good or bad about a piece, rather than just giving you this whole play-by-play of every single little thing that happens. So, in other words, I try to refrain from spoilers as much as possible, but they do arise as they pertain to the discussion I'd like to have with the piece. If you would like to watch Mad God before or after this review, unfortunately, it is not on Tubi. When it debuted like officially to the public outside of film festivals, it was a Shudder exclusive. When it comes to streaming services and where to watch it that way, you can do so on either Shudder or AMC Plus or like YouTube, Amazon, Google Play, rental and buying of it digitally. Or you can be a pirate. I don't care. If that's your option, if that's the choice that you make, I wish you smooth sailing. But with all of those pleasantries out of the way, let's just go ahead and jump right on into this review. So, to write a synopsis for Mad God is a very interesting task because there is no dialogue and there is no direct narrative direction that the story is going in. In fact, it seems like it is pretty up to interpretation to the audience. But you know what? I like a challenge, so here we go. Mad God takes place several years after a catastrophic war transforms the world into a monstrous hellscape. While life still prevails in this post-apocalyptic wasteland, not all of it is human. The audience watches the intricacies of this new world unfold through the exploration of a humanoid figure known as the Assassin. A being who travels through the labyrinth of torture, grime, and suffering that is now Earth while on some unknown mission. However, the deeper the assassin goes, the more grotesque and dangerous life has become for those who still inhabit the world. Mad God, to me, comes across as a showcase of what could happen if God were to abandon his creations. Or worse, if God decided to eternally punish humanity for their quote-unquote hostility towards him, as the opening passage suggests. Now, as I said, this film has no dialogue. Well, it almost has no dialogue, because I know there's gonna be a little smartass out there who's going to tell me some technicalities in the comments, so let me get those technicalities out of the way. There are, like, examples of, like, noise or dialogue. Early on, there's like baby garbles as words. Then towards the end there's like a baby crying, but I count the baby garbles more as dialogue than a baby crying. And also later on there is like one short moment of a character reciting an Italian passage. So technically there is one piece of dialogue in this film. It's just in Italian and there are no subtitles. The point is there is a whole lot of room for a viewer to be able to make their own interpretation, own reading, or own narrative based upon the scenes that they get presented with. And forgive me if I'm wrong, but it does seem like it's one of those things where there is no right or wrong answer to what the narrative is. And it also seems from what I have found that Tippett kind of leans into this because there is no clear or definitive explanation for what is happening in Mad God. Now, I did see and watch some reviews where he talked about his inspiration for the theming and for kind of what it's more about, but I consider like what it's about different from the actual narrative that we're presented with, if that makes sense. Basically, he's talked a lot about what inspired this creation, but it doesn't seem like he has directly said specifically what the narrative is, and especially that ending. And that's something that I always appreciate, is when an artist just goes ahead and embraces the fact that death of the author exists, and they allow the audience to come up with their own answer of what they see within the work. I don't know. Maybe it's the artsy-fartsy kid in me, but I like the embrace of letting the audience decide for themselves what's happening. And also nowadays, it is a fantastic exercise in critical thinking that I think is very much needed. So of course, obviously later on, I'm going to have a lot of thoughts and share my interpretations of what I think is happening in the narrative of Mad God. But I guess before we get into that discussion, or even the discussion of like the artistry, how beautiful the film is, beautiful kind of being subjective, because I think corrosion and filth and disgust is beautiful in a way. We'll get to it. I digress. Before we get to any of that, let me first also kind of preface with the fact that this movie is not going to be for everybody. Like, I'm sure that there's some of you out there who immediately heard me mention that there is no dialogue and that the narrative is up for interpretation, and you immediately dipped. Mad God, although it is crude and disgusting and sadistic in many ways, it is still a very artsy-fartsy film. And so because of that, there are going to be people who watch it and they don't get it, or they may even think that it's pretentious in some kind of way because of its unconventional narrative style. So if you've seen clips of Mad God and it's looked interesting to you, but you just can't handle the fact that nobody speaks, it's probably not gonna be the movie for you unless you want to get out of your comfort zone and try something new. But for me personally, I actually found Mad God to be super interesting, pretty disturbing, and some moments it was insufferably sad. But before we get into any interpretations of Mad God, or I guess just specifically my interpretation of Mad God, let's discuss the artistry of this crazy 30-year passion project. If you're a regular here and you have seen Mad God, then you probably already know how much I adore the environments that we see. Each new place that we enter is distinctly different from the last, and yet they all still fit together as one cohesive world due to the visual grime and filth that penetrates nearly every single scene. Even scenes where it's very beautiful, you still find remnants of that filth and grime that has just covered the planet. In a lot of ways, I feel like Mad God is a really, really great example of Kantian and Burkean sublimity. And by that, I just mean that there's a lot of examples of either characters or buildings, monsters, being very scary, overlooming and intimidating forces, and yet at the same time there's also a grandeur to these elements, to these things or buildings or people that make them very beautiful or awe-inducing. And if you don't know much about the sublime, that's kind of what it is something that's like huge and terrifying and scary and intimidating, and yet at the same time that grandeur of it is awe-inducing and beautiful. It's something that's scary and beautiful at the same time, basically. And as I said, there are many examples, but I do think that the easiest example to give is the Plague Doctor. Obviously, big, looming, intimidating figure, and yet the way that it moves and speaks is very gentle and soft and kind of like a spirit or a ghost just like gliding through. It's, oh my god. The Plague Doctor is a perfect, easy example of how Mad God uses the sublime. Visually, Mad God is very striking, and it does carry a really good balance of the industrial, grimy wasteland, along with some areas that are a little bit more grand and beautiful, even despite all of the filth. Although I do have to admit, as I said, This place is so like perfectly grimy and filthy and disgusting. I love it so much. If it were not for the eternal suffering that takes place within this new world, I would want to live in the world of Mad God. However, Mad God is more than just visually nice to look at, although I will say the intense detail within the settings and the characters in and of itself is a huge testament to the artistry behind this film. But another element that I think really speaks for the artistry behind it is the quality of the animation and also the sort of mixed media approach to making this film, because it is primarily stop motion animation, but it is not 100% stop motion animation. In fact, there were moments where I had trouble figuring out, is this animation or is this somebody in a costume doing this more up close scene? Because if it's animation, there are quite a few moments in the beginning, I'll have clips right here to show you exactly the moments that I saw, where the animation, if it's animation, is so smooth and so fluid, it seems like it's a real person. And it might be a real person, because Mad God is not opposed to using real people in this grotesque stop motion world. And these scenes that I have shown, like, I still don't know, is the animation just that good? Or was somebody wearing a suit for these, like, up-close shots, and that's why it looks like a real human moving, because it is a real human. But I'm going to hope that it is just the smoothness and fluidity of the animation until I am told otherwise, probably by somebody in the comments breaking my heart. Although in a way, I guess I did really like and enjoy the fact that sometimes I couldn't tell if something was animation or if it was a person in a costume. Because it does lean into that mixed media approach that I think Tippett uses here, and it just blends really well. As I said, it's mostly animated, but there are quite a few examples of real people or real parts of people taking the place of something that could be animated. And I think it just creates like a really unique and cool tone to it. For example, one of the moments that I loved the most, can you guys guess it? Can you guys guess it? If you said the surgeon and the nurse, 10 points to you, but you have to keep track of your own points. I'm not doing that. I absolutely loved when the surgeon and the nurse were introduced, because this is a scene that's really grungy and grimy. It gives that old school Saw kind of feeling to it. And even though the surgeon and the nurse are human models, they are still shot in stop motion rather than film, meaning that all of their movements are extremely twitchy and unnatural, which I think was a really good, cool quality to have to not only set the tone of these characters, but set the tone of the scene and for what was about to happen. Although I do have to express my disappointment that at some point in this scene, the picture does get brighter and less grimy, and although I think they're kind of still shot in stop motion, it's not as unnatural and twitchy as it was initially. I do feel some disappointment there. I do wish that it carried through. Like, I think the nurse completely stops getting shot in stop motion, but the surgeon kind of still is. I don't know. I don't know what's going on there. But I was kind of disappointed when they became less menacing figures all of a sudden. You know what I mean? Which, side note, discussing how things kind of become more bright shortly after the surgeon and the nurse, because this is a film. Now, I don't know when he actually started to shoot it. Did he just start preparation for it in the 80s? Did he film some of it in the 80s or even 90s? I don't know. I looked into it, but I didn't look into it that heavily, just because I have so much time to make these reviews. But if it was something that he started shooting in like the 80s or 90s, I thought it was really interesting to see the progression of camera quality. Because I think when the film starts, everything feels very claustrophobic and kind of grainy, a little blurry, but as the film progresses, you can slowly start to see way more HD quality in either the stop motion images or just like the film itself. Another detail of the mixed media that I liked a whole lot was the inclusion of real human eyes. And the specific one that I'm going to pinpoint is a little bit of a smaller detail of human eyes being used. In fact, it's so small that it might go unrecognized. And it's a moment later within the film, within a laboratory, and there are statues all around, and these statues eyes are following certain characters. Well, the eyes on the statues are real human eyes. It's not animation, but it is so subtle that I think it could be easily mistaken for animation. No, if you look close, those are some real human eyes. Now, of course, like I said, this is not the only example of Tippett using real human eyes within this piece. I think some of the eyes that are used are literally his eyeball, and also the way that it's done, let me just say, it does remind me of Where the Dead Go to Die. Finally, before we get into all of that, like, deep analytical discussion of interpreting what the narrative is, I do want to touch on how I think Mad God could be considered a disturbing film to some people. And also explain why I found myself feeling very sad while watching this. Okay, so first of all, don't get your panties in a twist and be in the comments to be typing, oh, if you think this is disturbing, you big old pussy, blah, 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 blah. I don't know. Shut up. Shut up. I read a comment recently within the past week of somebody stating that Midsummer disturbed them so bad they couldn't finish it. Midsummer. In my opinion, what makes a film disturbing is something that is extremely subjective and personal to the person. You know, for example, I've used this example quite a bit, but I feel more disturbed by something like Eraserhead or Rabbits than I have any of the faux snuff that we have reviewed so far. Because I am more disturbed by environment and atmosphere than I am by getting the most extreme possible thing shoved into my face. And I think that Mad God pushes into the realm of disturbing not only visually, but contextually. Because Mad God is about a mad God. A God who is angry with humanity and is punishing them for their transgressions. It's about God's full turn away from the earth and from humans, even from those who are innocent. I think that there are many examples I or anyone could use as a pillar of calling this a disturbing film. But for me, I think the strongest aspect of it was just like the cruelty within it. And a lot of this cruelty is done onto people or souls that don't seem to deserve it, who are stuck within this world underneath God's wrath, even though they aren't exactly the ones who have transgressed. More people than not have pissed off God, basically. So even the innocent ones have to suffer. And if you are thinking about it, yes, I'm talking about the monkey, the doll, and the slave workers. For a film that has absolutely no dialogue or narrative direction, Mad God made me feel more sorrow than just about any other film I've ever seen. Now it might be beat by next week's film though, because that's one where I never wanted to review it, and I'm about to review it, and I think I'm gonna cry a lot. And some of you know that I do like when a film is cruel or brutal, especially like in the gore department. But the cruelty that is presented within Mad God just made me sad. It just made me so sad. And the reason for that, I think, is because that lack of dialogue emphasizes the character's actions. And the level of cruelty that we see towards innocence within this world is just, dude, it's tragic. I'm not gonna, like the doll sticks with me. I'm not gonna show what the doll is doing, but what you see, if you watch it, what you think that the doll is doing is definitely what the doll is doing. That dead stare, the only thing left uncorroded of the doll is its face, just staring blankly. Or even when one of the slave workers is reaching out for, like, in desperate help. Again, I think what it is the lack of dialogue is emphasizing the actions that we're watching. And I don't know. Nobody told me that when I go to finally watch Mad God, it was going to break my heart, but it did. Now, into the meat of the conversation. STARGUTZZZ, I watched Mad God. what the hell is happening and what the hell is that ending. I'm going to try my best to give you an explanation of what I thought was going on. But let me first start with a disclaimer. Because this narrative is so open to interpretation, we are not all going to see the same things out of it. And as I said, I don't think there's going to be any right or wrong answer unless there is a quote-unquote right answer that Tippett has shared of what the literal narrative is and what the literal meaning of the ending is. Even then, you can make the argument for death of the author, so who cares? At the end of the day, there is no real right or wrong answer. And I think trying to think this way, I'm about to get all like I was in the English department on you guys. I think there are a lot of people who've been scarred from their English teachers, making them analyze some piece of literature or some piece of media with the expectation that there is a correct way to read it or a correct interpretation to take away from it. And the truth is, as long as you have evidence from that text for your personal interpretation or your personal reading, then it's valid. Man, I hate that English courses have scarred so many people into thinking there's only one way to read or interpret things, one correct answer for everything. The truth is, if there is evidence for whatever you see out of it within the text itself, it's a valid reading, it's a valid interpretation. Calm down. Everybody calm down. There's no right or wrong answers. I purposefully did not watch or read any other reviews or like video essays, analyses of Mad God, specifically because I wanted to be able to watch it and come to my own conclusions. So if what I'm about to share within this section is not of the popular opinion, that is why. I am taking what I see, running with my own ideas, trying to piece things together myself, and you know what? Doing that is a lot better than seeing what somebody else has said and then just regurgitating it. You know, at least I'm coming up with answers myself. I'm using my brain rather than being spoon-fed the right answer. And also, let me just say that this section will have some spoilers in it, so keep that in mind. Depending on how passionate I get here, I will or will not warn you about the spoilers that are about to happen, so just keep that in mind. Because we are talking about an interpretation of the narrative, I am going to be bringing up spoilers. Now, where the hell do I start? I was thinking maybe first let's go over the creation of the mad world of Mad God and its significance, and then I'm going to kind of talk a little bit about the roles of the assassin and the last human. The assassin more so than the last human. So first of all, there is absolutely zero doubt in my mind that this world our hero traverses in the film is actually just Earth. It is a new Earth that has been made after the destruction of nuclear war. And this is probably like the most obvious part of what's happening. And maybe in some cases it's the only obvious part of what's happening. And it's because it's supported by that Leviticus passage in the very beginning, which it does move fast and it is in like a weird font. So if you missed it, let me read it for you now. If you disobey me and remain hostile to me, I will act against you in wrathful hostility. I, for my part, will discipline you sevenfold for your sins. You shall eat the flesh of your sons and the flesh of your daughters. I will destroy your cult places and cut down your incense stands, and I will heap your carcasses upon your lifeless idols. I will spurn you. I will lay your cities in ruin and make your sanctuaries desolate, and I will not savor your pleasing odors. I will make the land desolate, so that your enemies who settle it shall be appalled by it. And you I will scatter among the nations, and I will unsheath the sword against you. Your land shall become a desolation, and your cities a ruin. That sounds exactly like the world we are presented with within Mad God. This passage feels like a direct explanation for why New Earth is the way that it is. It is something that was created out of God's anger and wrath towards humanity, and in a way he has left evil to its own demise, or maybe even like to its own devices. It's a truly godless world where evil and sin not only prevail, but they rule. And we see this through those few innocent souls' sufferings at the hands of evil with absolutely no hope of being saved by anyone. Example, the monkey, the doll, the slave workers, maybe even those mushroom people, I don't know. Mushroom people kind of just seems like it was nature, you know what I mean? There is one moment pretty early on that I like a whole lot, which showcases the very prevalent degeneracy and sin of the New Earth. And that's the moment towards the beginning when the assassin is looking through windows in a building. And this is a scene that kind of builds on or plays on that trope of looking into apartment windows with separate lives and stories, sharing this one confined space. Another film that I can think of that does the same thing is The Great Gatsby, when Nick is drunk and looking at all the different lives in apartment buildings. That's what this scene reminded me of. Although it's a little bit more sinister in Mad God. I, at the present moment, can't remember what all of the windows had in them. I remember there was a guy playing piano, but the one that stuck out to me the most was a silhouette of a woman being stabbed. However, as she's being stabbed, she is giggling and I think kind of moaning as if she's having sex. Like, being stabbed is something that is pleasurable to her, and I thought that was very interesting. In a way, it's like Earth, or New Earth, has become hell. But it's not hell because of the devil or demons. It's more like God has made Earth become hell through his anger and through his wrath. Now, the ending is probably the most abstract part of the story that I think just about everyone is going to interpret differently in a way. But for me, I believe that it's pretty representative of humans always choosing the path of destruction or always choosing the path of war. So let's kind of go over what happens, and this is going to be like a major spoiler section here, just FYI. Let's go over what happens around the end. So from the assassin's body comes a baby, and this baby is crushed into stardust, and it seems like it's sent back into the universe, triggering either the Big Bang or a Big Bang, which causes all existence to completely start over. And within this timeline of watching the existence of Earth develop all over again, it seems to end the exact same way, with the destruction through means of nuclear war. In this world, it seems like time is pretty eternal. Even though it passes, things also still remain the same. Like, the path of existence doesn't seem like it ever changes. And no matter how many times that the cycle of existence is done, humans always choose to destroy themselves or destroy each other. They always choose that path of destruction via war. So that's kind of what I took away from the ending, is that even if it were all done again, it's like every single time humans are always choosing the same ending. Although I would be very interested to hear what other people think about it. Now, let's look at the assassin and the last human, who technically, by the way, isn't even the last human, but whatever. Not only do we see humans within that, like, looking at the building window at different lives thing, but the surgeon and the nurse are obviously human. So why this guy is the last human, I don't know. Maybe he's considered the last human because he is still, like, a spiritual man of God. Like, before I looked at the cast list, I referenced him as the rabbi, just because that's how he dressed. So I think a few different things about these characters. On one hand, I think it's entirely possible that they don't uphold any kind of higher purpose or higher meaning in the narrative. There's no, like, higher intention for them. They could just solely be two other entities impacted by this new Earth. But on my second watch, I don't know why. I don't even remember, like, what kicked off this train of thought. But on my second watch, I really began to liken the assassin to an angel. And I wondered if the rabbi could have been some sort of godly or more spiritual figure within the narrative. Although I don't know. It's really hard to say a whole lot about the last human just because we only see him once and it's during that very brief flashback moment. So we don't have as much information to go off of. Other than I think he is a rabbi because he seems to dress and present himself like a spiritual man. But it is hard. It's hard to interpret him very well because we don't see him as much. But no matter what, I think it is clear that he's like an important part of the eternal war that is happening in the film. Now, this eternal war that's happening, I have two ideas about. Either it is a continuation of that human war that destroyed all civilization, and the last human is still trying to win the eternal war. Or I also wondered, because New Earth is so akin to hell, and also because I believe the biblical apocalypse and rapture is linked to making Earth hell, I did wonder if it was perhaps a war between heaven and hell, and if it was related to the biblical apocalypse. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. I'm not sure. I'm still working through it. Now, I mentioned my idea of the assassin perhaps being an angel. STARGUTZZZ, why the hell do you think the assassin is an angel? He does not look like an angel in the slightest. In fact, he's dressed like he is ready for war and wearing a gas mask. And also, there are plenty of examples in the film where he sees lives who are suffering and he decides to turn away from them rather than helping them. So why is this figure, the assassin, why do you think that he's an angel? Well, first of all, in this world, God himself has turned away from humanity, so is it really that crazy to think that an angel would do the same? And also, like I said, I can't even remember what first brought the idea to my head that he could be an angel. I can't remember what first happened that made me think that, but I thought it and I ran with it, and I found a few pieces of evidence within the film that kind of helps support my idea of this. So I guess there's a few reasons why I think that. First, he does come down from the sky, and the place that he comes from we only really see in the flashback. But we know that is super up high, I guess up in the sky. And within that flashback, we get information that in order to be dropped below, he passes through like some water or some liquid. In a way, to me, this seems like a portal. He has to go through a portal in order to enter Earth's surface. But he is being lowered from the literal sky, some mysterious place up in the sky. And up in the sky is also where the rabbi is at. Also, in the opening, as he is descending down into New Earth, the top layer of Earth, or the crust of it, whoever is at the very top watching him being lowered, they begin to shoot at him. Like, there are cannons and guns trying to shoot him down and stop him from entering Earth, as if he is some sort of threat to them. And to me, this kind of relates back to the passage talking about humanity's hostility towards God. If they're hostile towards God and they see that little thing coming out of the sky, they might know that that's an angel and be hostile towards it too, thus explaining why they're trying to bring him down or destroy him. Also, both times that we see him come down to Earth, it seems like he's coming down for some sort of mission, which the missions we never really get to learn anything about. We don't know what these missions are or what the end goals of either of them are. However, I do want to bring them up because through these missions, we get to see the passage of time. When the film opens, it is like a present day, I would almost say like hundreds of years in the future since the initial destruction of Earth happened. However, we get a flashback, and in this flashback, it seems like it might have been very shortly after the destruction of Earth has taken place. Why do I think this? Well, not only is his suit a lot newer in the flashback, but the briefcases. In the flashback and in the present day, there is a heavy emphasis on briefcases. And within the flashback, the number of briefcases is significantly low. Like, I think there's only 5 or 6 briefcases on the ground while the assassin is going on his mission. However, present day, when he gets to the briefcase zone, it is mountains upon mountains and mountains of briefcases, of failed missions. So that to me tells a very, very massive passage of time that the assassin has somehow lived through. Like, how many years have passed between the initial destruction, when the wasteland was still kind of new, to the present day that we see the assassin in, where it's mountains upon mountains, and like the cities are even more corroded and desolate and destroyed than they were when it was fresh in the flashback. So because of that, it seems like he has endured potentially hundreds of years. I am willing to say that it's been hundreds of years. What human entity could live for hundreds of years? Also, finally, that baby, dude. If anything, I think the cherry on top of perhaps the assassin being an angel is the baby. So the baby that comes out of him is turned into stardust, and it causes a big bang. So this baby that comes out of him, I already explained, they take it, it gets crushed, it gets ground up into stardust, and it gets sent back into the universe, creating another big bang. And I don't know if a baby is coming from an entity and it's getting turned into stardust and it has the potential to create a universe. That sounds like it's a baby from some kind of very powerful supernatural force, does it not? I don't know, maybe that's just me. But to me, that does give like angel energy. Like an angel would have the power to have a child asexually, and that child having the potential to make a new universe. But why would an angel be dressed like that? And also, if there are some things relating to like biblical mythology, if it were an angel, or if there were any angels here, why would it not be a biblical angel with real human eyeballs all over the place? I see your argument there, I do. I think if there were any angels in this, probably the biblical representation. I hear you. But the argument that he isn't an angel just because he doesn't have wings and he's not dressed in white, dude, look at this movie. Why wouldn't Angel look normal in this movie? My explanation for like the whole gas mask getup is that New Earth is very more than likely a more dangerous climate to be in. I mean, several examples in this, we see mushroom clouds, the evidence of nuclear destruction, nuclear war. So obviously the air, there's probably radiation, and the air is probably toxic as hell. And so that could be a reasoning for him wearing the whole gas mask getup. Now, this is still kind of like a loose idea that I'm playing around with. I only really got to watch it 3 times this time around. However, I do see myself being able to rewatch it more, maybe finding other little things. And that's something that I like about this film, is that I think it has rewatchability, because each time that you rewatch it, you're gonna get something new out of it. Although I do want to share an alternative idea that I have for the assassin, one that probably makes a little bit more sense, isn't as much of a reach, and it's more simple. I think it's extremely possible that the assassin is also just another desolate and alone being in this new world. And the reason that he's continuing these missions is because that's all he knows. As I said before, it's very possible both the last human and the assassin are just other entities impacted by this new world. The only time that we see that above place that the assassin descends from is in the flashback. Now, I know right before the credits there's another flash of the last human - rabbi in that above place looking down as if they are waiting for the assassin. I know that. However, there is no evidence that says that it's not still part of the flashback as like a solemn ending. That final scene is literally the same scene in the flashback, just played again. Literally. There is no evidence that that is currently how that above place looks. We don't really know what it looks like within the current day that the film takes place in. So, for all we know, the assassin is either the last one or one of the last ones. He might be the last of his kind, is what I'm getting at here. And the reason he continues to descend down and go on these missions is because that is the only form of existence that he knows. I got the idea that this could could be possible pretty much solely from the map that he uses. It's very tattered and worn, and it's literally falling apart in his hands from old age every time that he brings it out to reference it. It is just crumbling and falling apart from its old age. So to this, it gave me the idea that perhaps he's using old maps and he's going on old missions because that is the only form of existence that he knows. And that's the only thing he knows to do. And so he might be alone continuing to do these missions and referencing old maps because that's all he knows. He's just as lost as every other creature in this world. And I think this reading is a very likely one. However, I still just do really like the idea that the assassin could be an angel. That's my personal bias. But like I said, no matter what the narrative actually is here, it is super open for interpretation. And I would actually like to hear some of your guys' interpretations in the comments. I think it being so vague does make it something that's very interesting to watch, and as I said, it increases the rewatchability, for me at least, because I'm going to want to keep rewatching it to uncover more pieces, more details that maybe I didn't see before. Or even like come up with new ideas and new interpretations that maybe I didn't think about before. To me, there's no dialogue, there's no narrative direction, but because of the lack of narrative direction, I feel more inclined to rewatch it over and over and over, trying to piece it together. Because I think every time that you rewatch this film, there's going to be a new detail to uncover. And I don't know. The artistry is already so cool, and then the fact that it has that rewatchability to be able to discover new things just makes it even cooler. This film in total is cool. Overall, Mad God is just it's a gorgeous, interesting, grotesque, and unique film that it took me way too long to finally sit down and watch it. I love the way that it can be so gnarly and grotesque and crude, and yet at the same time it still makes us think about the world around us. And I love that it is like this exploration of Earth turned into hell by the hands of a literal mad god. I think it's a film that can make you feel so much and think about so much without ever saying a single piece of dialogue, and I really love that about this film. Of course, I also love the artistry, how it's open to interpretation, how it seems like Tippett is like really leaning into death of the author and letting the audience come up with their own conclusions. It's great, dude. This is every literature film nerd's dream right here. Now, as I said, of course, it's definitely not going to be a film that's for everybody. I think that lack of dialogue and narrative direction would be annoying to some people. It would make some people fall asleep or just feel like aggravated. I don't know. I think I could definitely see somebody watching this and calling it pretentious just because there's no dialogue or narrative direction. But I think that it's cool because it lets the audience create answers for themselves. I like that. I like that a whole lot. So it's definitely not for everyone. However, if you like nasty, filthy, post-apocalyptic wastelands, disturbing imagery, stop motion, and anything that would lie within the dreams of a 2005 Xbox older brother, go watch Mad God immediately. Especially if you're a regular on this channel who seems to have the same like taste of film as me and you haven't seen Mad God yet, go watch Mad God. Go watch it right now. If this is the first video of mine that you're seeing, if what I said sounds interesting to you, I think it's worth checking out. However, if you're not a person that's into like the whole artsy fartsy indie films where you have to figure it out for yourself or, you know, sit through no dialogue, then you're probably not gonna like it, even if you like the way that it looks. But I love it, and if you're a freak on this channel, chances are you are going to love it as well. So I literally cannot recommend Mad God enough. So what tier will I be putting Phil Tippett's Mad God on? Is it not obvious that it's definitely going within the A tier? Dude, this is like such an easy A tier. I feel like before I even watched this, I could have told you that this is an easy A tier. I will be watching it several times over in the future. I will probably continue to talk about it, and I can't wait to watch it more to gain more from it. Like I have already said, this is one of those films where I think the more times that you watch it, the more you're gonna kind of get out of it. Also, did I just realize here at the end that Vivian is cut off from the video the entire time? Hold on. I know it's the conclusion, but this is for all you Vivian fans. She's right here. I only just now realized that she's cut off in the background, so I'm gonna hold her for the conclusion. And with that, we are done with yet another movie review. Let's bring Vivian back up here. Thank you guys so much. If you stayed all the way until the very end, if you like this video, please make sure that you stab that like button. It is a free and easy way to help support this channel. Also, is there a film that you would like to hear me discuss or talk about? You'd like to hear my opinions on? Put it down in the comments below and maybe you will see it show up in a future video. Also, did you just like this video so much that you want to hear me talk about more disturbing movies, B movies, hidden gems on Tubi, not so gem-worthy films on Tubi? This summer, we're doing a summer in Traumaville, so if you like trauma, stick around for that. If you would just like to hear me ramble about more movies in general, please consider hitting that subscribe button and the bell icon so you can be notified every time I make a new upload. Which new uploads are every Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. On the screen as well are some of my socials. If you would like some additional STARGUTZZZ content, on the screen and linked in the description below is my live channel. Now, let me say, I'm so sorry. For the next 2 weeks, right, this Friday and next Friday, we will not be doing any live streams. And the reason we are not doing live streams is for an extremely selfish reason. Season 5 of Fish Tank is currently live, and this is the last, as I'm recording this, it's April 1st, it's my birthday, but it is also, I think, day 18. It's going on for 30 days. So this Friday and next Friday are going to be like the last 2 weeks of the season. So, yeah. We're not doing a live stream for like 2 weeks because whenever a season of Fish Tank is live, it runs over every extra moment of my life that I have. I sit there with it on my computer monitor 24/7. I don't even care. I fucking love Fish Tank. If you also like Fish Tank and you're curious who I'm rooting for, season 5, twins win. And now just one final thank you. So much if you stayed all the way until the very end. Our time here is precious, and the fact that you have used your time to sit here and listen to me ramble and also spew my opinions or interpretations of Mad God, whether they make sense or not, just thank you. I appreciate you. I appreciate your time and the time that you have spent to sit here and watch this video. It really does mean a whole lot to me. And so I guess with that, I will see you guys in the next video. But until then, please have a great night and stay safe out there.